Well, the political conventions are in the books now. Joe Biden accepted the Democratic nomination for president last week in Wilmington, Delaware. President Trump accepted his renomination on the White House lawn last night. And there are now 67 days left until Election Day.
Yeah, there's a busy campaign season ahead after these conventions, too.
Joining us now to wrap it all up is political science professor Bill Muck with North Central College. Good evening.
Good to chat with you.
Well, let's start with something I know we've all been wondering as we watch these conventions. Were any minds changed, do you think?
Well, that's a great question. You know, we don't know how many people actually tune in for this. When I talk to my students, they don't necessarily watch as closely. So I'm guessing, you know, there's people that are interested or watching. So most of the country has probably made up their mind. So for both of these conventions, they're really trying to pick off a few of the moderates who haven't made up their minds, and at the same time excite the base, right? Get those who you know you're going to vote or that are going to support you out to the polls. So it's really about motivation.
The debates are next. We know House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is suggesting and hoping that Joe Biden does not debate with the president. Why do you think this is, and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's a terrible idea. I think that what you want to do is you want to have both candidates in front of the American public as often as you can, let them engage. Now, I know Nancy Pelosi's point is that she doesn't think that Trump is going to engage in a legitimate conversation. I understand that perspective, but the American people need to see the two of them engaging, see an exchange of ideas, be able to measure the two. So, you know, I disagree with Nancy on that. I think it's really important that we have these candidates in front of the American people.
And Joe Biden has said that he will debate. Let's get to the different campaign strategies. As President Trump likes to point out, Joe Biden has spent much of the last few months at home because of COVID-19. He announced that he's going to be doing some more campaign appearances, but the president today is beginning what will be campaign rallies and stops across the country on an almost daily basis. What's your take about how the next few months will look?
Well, this election is going to be about Donald Trump. So, you know, I think Donald Trump wants to make it about Joe Biden. But the reality is this is a referendum on the past 4 years with Donald Trump. So Biden will be out there. He will be engaging. He'll be meeting with the people. But it really will come down to what Trump continues to do over the next couple months. My guess is that it's going to be an intense campaign. It's going to get ugly. One thing that we saw coming out of the Republican convention is this theme of law and order. I'm guessing Trump is going to continue to hit that. He's going to talk about the violence, the looting, the riots. I mean, it's going to be that type of message coming from the Republicans. My guess is that Joe Biden is going to take a different tack and talk more about inclusivity, about bringing the country together. So I think it's going to be a tense, and it may not always be pretty.
Bill, do you think the COVID restrictions could hurt or hinder either party?
It's a great question. You know, I think Donald Trump would love to be out there. He really thrives on the big audiences. So he struggles to some degree when he's reading from a teleprompter, when he doesn't have a big audience. So I think for him, it's going to be emotionally difficult. And again, you know, Joe Biden just has to be out there enough. I don't think he needs to be doing lots of events. You know, as long as he does the debates, as he gives a handful of speeches, you know, people know Joe Biden. He's been around for a long time. There was a long, extensive Democratic primary. So the voters know about Joe Biden. The focus really is going to be on Donald Trump.
So when people talk about an October surprise, something that could change a lot of minds, what areas are you looking at as possible surprises?
Well, the big one you hear about is whether the Department of Justice is going to release something about the Russia investigation. And that may happen. Although the political world we live in now, you know, you talk about an October surprise, it feels like every day there's a new surprise.
Very true.
And that's just kind of the nature of our politics today. So I don't think anything could happen late in the game to really change the election. So my guess is we're going to continue at this frantic pace where there's always going to be some new story or new scandal. And I don't think October will necessarily change anything.
Do you think in any way that Kamala Harris will help Joe Biden or Mike Pence will help Donald Trump in the days to come?
Yeah, I think Kamala is going to play a big role, or Kamala is going to play a big role. They're going to have her out, and she's going to be really good at pushing the president. So Joe Biden really wants to play the more grandfather figure. He wants to be the guy that's going to pull the country together. And so if they can have her out there attacking the president, and she's really, really good about that. When you think about some of her best moments in the Senate, we're putting people on the hot seat. So I anticipate her playing a prominent role. Mike Pence, probably not the same role. Donald Trump consumes so much of the air, so he'll really be center stage. And so I would anticipate that you're going to see more of the Democratic VP than you will out of the Republican.
And when it comes to voting, we're on a different clock this cycle than in years past, because a lot of folks are going to be voting not just a few days early, but perhaps weeks and weeks early.
That's right. And so I think for the candidates, they have to be thinking about reaching voters now. You can't wait until the end of October. You can't wait to get hot. You've got to be convincing voters now, because with mail-in voting, you're going to have people voting much, much earlier, which is great. I mean, I think given all the stress on the system, the earlier one can vote, the better.
Political science professor Bill Muck of North Central College, thank you so much. Be safe, be well, sir.
Thank you very much.